So the opportunities to restore hydrology, restore flow through this area, and really try to allow the wetland to come to life in an area where it's actually very close to an existing wetland is something that we're going to be further exploring, and hopefully the stormwater study will also discuss a bit more of what grading. This keeps going in and out. Did it die completely? No, it did. Okay. Maybe after this. So the third area is the zone that goes along Chico Bayou through the middle of the neighborhood. Does any of the residents in the room live along Chico Bayou and have a sense of, maybe not today, but this is essentially when Jen showed some pictures of the riprap and the structures to try to maximize flow. We can see some overgrowth in those areas. There have been concerns about erosion, but riparian buffers, which basically means a buffer around a flowing water body or a riparian stream, can really maximize some environmental and ecological benefits, especially when it comes to water quality. So water quality is a big concern for many states and cities around the country, and I think we're all concerned about water quality leading out into our beaches and our rivers and streams. These riparian buffers and wetlands really work well together to capture sediment, to capture runoff, which refers to contamination like oil or gasoline that might run off from people's cars, or fertilizers from people's yards, to really help try to purify and cleanse the water before it enters the Mississippi Sound. It's really amazing what nature can do when you just give it a little bit of space as well. And then you'll see for everything not covered in that area, all the light blue things, but this really extends over the entire neighborhood. We're calling pocket forests, pocket parks. This really indicates that even if an opportunity zone isn't specifically identified for, let's say, wetland restoration or for riparian buffer or for afforestation, we recognize that there are some residents that really might want to relocate for different reasons that are not located in those areas. And what we would really like to do is partner with the city and with other residents to ensure that any acquisitions that happen outside of a dedicated restoration site are overall improving the quality of life, the flood resilience, the economic resilience of residents staying behind. So that could lead to sidewalk programs, it could lead to reforesting or doing pocket parks in some of those properties. None of that has been determined yet, right? This is all very conceptual. We're introducing this. We really want to hear your ideas about that, and we also want to make sure that we're continuing the conversation around how to improve quality of life for all the residents that have participated in our surveys and who really want to see this project come to fruition. Okay, so I talked a little bit about this, but some of you might be wondering, well, what specifically is going to happen next, right? What are some of the outcomes of this? What does a phase 2 project actually mean? So NIFWF essentially likes to, NIFWF is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. They're the funder for this project. And they like to fund projects in multiple phases. So phase 1 is what they call a planning and capacity building grant. It's what's given us the opportunity to collaborate with all of you and advance this work. Phase 2 is what they call 30 to 60% design solutions. So what it would allow us to do is to conduct a detailed site assessment and work with Wildlife Mississippi for a conservation management plan. It will allow us to work with an engineering and design firms to start understanding what some of the grading and implementation permitting requirements and costs would be for the wetland restoration, for any riparian buffer, or other flood mitigation strategies we do on site. It will also provide funding for buy-in, additional staff time with Jen and other staff in partnership with Cherokee Concerned Citizens and other partners in this project to further advance what a relocation strategy for participants who want to relocate actually looks like, where funding for that might come from. We'll hear from Moffitt-Nichols about a rehousing strategy. We know a lot of folks want to relocate within Pascagoula, and we really want to do what we can as a partner to help enable people to reinvest any relocation funds back into the community that they love. And we'll start getting into some of the nitty-gritty details of things like permitting, cost-benefit analysis, and a financial strategy. And part of that is to prepare for phase 3, which gets to 60 to 90% design solution, right? We think about breaking this out into chunks where we can get a lot of investment from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to advance this. And they do provide implementation funding. If we can get all the way to phase 4 by continuing to work together, we can really unlock a really incredible funding source. And it's really going to take everyone in this room and partners to make sure that we can get to that part of the project. So your input is really, really important. In addition to input into the project, we also want to make space for opportunities for the community to get really involved and engaged in this idea of restoration through doing things like invasive species documentation and removal projects, and really kind of getting out there, getting into nature, getting our hands dirty, and really trying to prepare the ground for the restoration project in the future. All right. Is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you. That got to us quickly. Do we want to, will we just move into the 2 other presentations before questions? So we're not done yet. So if you've got questions before we move into hearing from our two of our amazing partners on this project, write them down on your notes, and we'll be sure that we leave time at the end to cover everything and get some more cheesecake. There's a couple places back there. So Moffitt-Nichols or David? David. Julia? Together. Okay, all right, let's go.
Okay, I'm gonna say just speak. If you wanna start, and I'll step with you back. Sure.
Oh, you're good.
Yes.
The napkin.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Everybody has some sort of something to.
While we're getting a battery change, I'm Julia Mudd. I work with Moffitt-Nichols in New Orleans. And we had the pleasure of working with Gulf Coast Community Design Studio.
I'm Georgia DeWitt. I'm a landscape architect at the Gulf Coast Community Design Studio.
And I'm David Kurtz, the director of design.
And so I work mainly in water resources engineering. I also do coastal engineering as well. And I'm working towards becoming a professional engineer eventually. But yeah, we got on this project because luckily we worked with GCCDS in the past on a project in Lost Point. And so we learned about this project and we're super interested in. Yeah, we've been loving working with them. So. So, start off, this is the an aerial view of Chico Bayou in south of Cherokee Forest neighborhood. And it gives a study overview, right? This is an old map. I think it's actually shown in one of the previous presentations. This is an old map from 1943 in Pascagoula. So, a study overview. in the H&H portion, so H&H is hydrology and hydraulic. So we do models of rain and water levels, as well as how it moves along the terrain. So the purpose of this H&H study was to identify locations of poor drainage, locations of flow constriction, as well as possible erosion issues throughout the community. So these are all stormwater conveyance issues. We also were wanting to identify locations for possible stormwater storage to help alleviate flooding, and as well as helping to guide the design for future proposed interventions by GCCDS and Biden. So our next step is to then test these hydraulic impacts from the eventual proposed designs, which everyone's working on, and determine the potential hydraulic benefits from these designs. You'll see here, this is a map of the watershed that we're working on. This is how it is in HECRAS, which is the software that we use to model the neighborhood. And so you'll see the two main water bodies here are Bayou Casad to the east and Chico Bayou to the west. And you'll see the Cherokee Forest neighborhood and industry outlined in red. So this is, once again, that map that we also saw earlier, but just to really show you how much the area has developed since the 1940s to now. The bottom left image is an aerial of 1992 of the neighborhood compared to a very undeveloped neighborhood in 1943. So you can imagine all this is added concrete and houses and impervious surfaces that were once before, marsh or just open land that allowed for more filtration of stormwater. So now it's all impervious surfaces, and that water has to go somewhere, and it's going that place much faster than it would before, and it's not filtering into the land as much as it used to. And so here, this is just a topographic map to kind of get everyone situated where we're at with elevation. Most of the Cherokee Forest neighborhood is under 12 feet and maybe 8 feet, so that's a common elevation datum. And just so it's pretty low lying, very close to water on all sides. And so we also had the pleasure of doing some site observations in September when we joined the community meeting. And we stopped and took some photos. You'll see this is the that structure that Jennifer mentioned earlier. That's going on what is that street? Cherokee, yeah, Cherokee Drive. So this is that bridge, and we're looking north up towards Chico Bayou. And so here are some of our site observations, right? So this is the Cherokee Drive Bridge looking north. You'll see it to the top right, that's the Cherokee Drive Bridge looking south. We notice a lot of erosion over here, constriction of flow. You see a lot of that concrete spalling occurring, but also you see kind of a beautiful bayou beyond that could very easily be restored to create something more beneficial for stormwater as well as the wildlife and habitat. We'll also see with the Cherokee Drive Bridge looking north, we saw a lot of algae, a lot of stagnant water, those gabion boxes you'll see that are lining the channel look a bit in disrepair. And it looked like there's some constriction going on, there's not enough flow going through here that you would normally suspect. And a lot of residents had reported that this waterway used to have a lot more flow to it, and it used to be someplace you could kayak down. And on the bottom left, you'll see this is an interesting point we saw at the cross section of Louise Street and Mohawk Street, where you see this ditch, and it's like a waterway that is pretty much curved entirely by this road that pretty much stops water flowing south down here through to the sound. And then also here you see, this is at the cul-de-sac of Navajo Ave. There's a drain outlet here, but it's almost invisible.
And this also leads to Chico Bayou. But you can see that this drainage is heavily clogged up and impaired, and also you'll see this beautiful natural area that could easily be restored to help with conveyance and stormwater storage.
So Julia's gonna show some of the models, and we wanted to kind of put this out first, so you can begin to pay attention to some of the places where the modeling shows some of the kind of stormwater, problems. And I'm gonna kind of go here and point them out. I mean, a few to watch for. One is to watch, when you look at the modeling, watch along this whole side here, and you'll see places where the flow is constricted. And so especially, as Julie pointed out, up there where not only is the flow constricted, but also the whole possibility of a continuous tree buffer is constricted. So watch for that. And also watch, when you look at the modeling, how is the bridge, even though the bridge is necessary, that it constricts the flow, so it speeds up the water, and therefore you get more erosion downstream, right? And so there's these situations where, where because of the infrastructure, the hard infrastructure, that begins to impact the flow. And also, pay attention to this area over here, where because of the fill that was put in when all this was developed, and the entire connection of this branch and this branch into the flow of the Chico Bayou is constricted there. Another thing that we look at, and when we're talking about flooding, some of the flooding is happening simply because, and this is not unusual, simply because the drainage system can't keep up with the rain. And so there's opportunities to, instead of having the drains come from the street into a street drain and going through culverts, and then outfalls into the ditch behind, we need to find opportunities to take some of that flow and have it more running on the surface, so it doesn't then get constricted with the culvert and drain. So we want to kind of put this up, so as Julia goes through the modeling, you can begin to compare back with this.
Thank you, David. Now into the HMH modeling update. So this is what HECRAS looks like. This is the terrain model you can see. So HECRAS depends mainly upon how surface water flows through terrain. And so I delineated this large watershed here, which is in blue. And it's actually two combined watersheds, Bayou Kusad and Bayou Chico Bayou. But I want to get a full picture of the whole setting. So you'll see in the red box there is kind of where the Cherokee Forest neighborhood is. So HECRAS is great for 2D modeling. It's also great when you don't have a lot of data. So one thing that we don't have is a lot of survey data of the subsurface drainage infrastructure. So, all the drains that you have in your neighborhood, they exist and those plans are somewhere, but we don't have that survey, so we don't know, the depth of those drains and where they all lead to. But we have ideas, right? We have general ideas of where they might lead to, and so this is great when you don't have detailed survey information, but you do know where the water is flowing. So you can actually see some of those, that subsurface infrastructure. I modeled it as surface flow. So that can be seen in these marks here that are essentially like canals to kind of represent how subsurface water might be flowing through, but instead we're modeling it as surface water. So that's just one of the kind of limitations right now with HECRAS, but it does not include the influence of pipes and pumps, but just our site visit data and our general knowledge of the area. So for this model, we ran 3 scenarios, and we are focusing on existing conditions right now. So we are still waiting upon proposed interventions that we plan to model. But for right now, we are modeling a 1-year 24-hour storm, which is 5.02 inches falling over 24 hours. And a 10-year 24-hour storm, which is 9.23 inches of rainfall falling over 24 hours. Combined with that rainfall, we have a Gulf boundary condition. You'll see the Gulf boundary is all along this edge of the water, right? And so for that, we picked tidal datums of mean high water and mean low water. So that the mean high water is 0.78 feet, NAVD88, and mean low water is negative 0.57 feet. So we had that as a fluctuating water level in the whole Gulf to combine with those rainfall events. And the third simulation, we modeled Hurricane Ida Gulf water levels. So I say Gulf water levels instead of storm surge because this is not a coastal model. So coastal models, you know, they're modeling more of the waves and the wind impact of storms. But to put it simply, HECRAS is more of a hydraulic and hydrologic model instead of surge and so on and so forth. So some of the assumptions and limitations with this is that we are only modeling fluctuating water levels for a storm surge event. And other things to note, right, is we are still waiting to calibrate the model because we need data to ensure that the model is representing what is accurately happening in your community. And we'll talk about that later. But also, you know, these model results can be used to indicate areas that are at risk of flooding and the conceptual impacts from proposed interventions, but they are not really designed to represent severity and direct depths and durations of flooding. So this is just to show you some of the data that goes into these models, right? On your left is land cover data. You'll see the community is mostly medium density developed. You'll see the green, that's actually green spaces. And then soils data is on our right. It's mostly soil D data, so it's the kind of poorest hydrologic conductivity. So it basically means most of the soils in this area are poorly draining, right? So not the best for flooding, right? And this is just to show you the data that goes into those two simulations we were talking about with the 1-year storm and the 10-year storm, as well as that mean high water and mean low water Gulf tidal boundary. So for those two scenarios, we're having a 1 year plus the boundary combined scenario, and then a 10-year plus this boundary combined scenario. And then for the Hurricane Ida water levels, we are using a gauge from USGS that showed a maximum of 6.24 feet surge in August 29th, 2021. And keep in mind, we are not combining the precipitation that occurred during Hurricane Ida with that surge, so it's just with the Gulf water levels. And so this is these are our results. For the 1 year, 24-hour storm going on the left, this is showing you flooding depth over time. And you can see it's, you know, filling up throughout Chico Bayou and obviously throughout the industrial park. And to your right is the 10-year storm. It is much more water and much more intensely filling up the neighborhood. And so this is pretty extreme, right? And remember, we do not have any subsurface features included in these models. So the flooding could be more severe or less severe depending on the influence of those drains and pipes. Yeah.
Okay, how far, the third, how far the next be now? 1, 2, 3 miles? Perfect, all area.
Yeah, I'll show you the results. They're coming up, but you'll kind of see see how they spread out across the terrain. It all depends on the elevation, right? So hopefully that'll be well depicted. So this is just to show you velocity going through here. So this is like particle tracing. So kind of to help you visualize how water is flowing throughout the neighborhood. So 1 year storm on the left. And I know it might be hard to see, I realize, but you can see the particles moving, and they're at a relative speed to one another. So you see it's zooming down Chico Bayou during the 1 year storm. Pay special attention up here towards north and Ingalls Ave, all the way down, going through Bayou Passant Parkway. I'll replay it just to see. Can you see that all right? Yeah. So yeah, those white lines are kind of trying to emulate how particles will be flowing through and the relative speed. And then 10-year storm is much more dramatic. Once again, special attention to the Cherokee Bridge right here, to this area right here, and how this flow is constricted going down. And then Hurricane Ida, this is the flood depth time lapse to your left. So definitely flooding depths are much less significant than the 1 year and 10 year storms. Because once again, we don't have precipitation in here. This is just the water levels. But it's really cool to show where in the community that storm surge is impacting the most, mainly up through these buffer areas, up through Chico Bayou, and in these low-lying areas, like here at the bottom of Navajo Circuit. And then, this is the flow particle tracing as well. So you'll see a lot of flow. It's definitely slower speeds because it's coming up from the Gulf, but you see it's making its way up through Chico Bayou and to the south of the Cherokee Forest neighborhood, through all the low-lying areas. Oh, so this is Apache by accident, sorry. But yeah, definitely impacting the industrial park as well. But. And then, this is just to point out some points of interest that I noted in the previous slide, but a little more zoomed in here, really focusing on Chico Bayou, on Cherokee Drive, and in these special areas right here where flow is constricted and redirected through these ditches that are very small compared to what they used to be, and how it's flooding the neighborhood. And those are both the 1 year storm. And this one over here is kind of more to show you the southern extents of that. And how it affects Navajo and Apache. And so an executive summary is, once again, only the surface water conveyance is depicted through these models. We are lacking subsurface data, and it's not a coastal model once again, so we don't have the same impact of natural waves and wind that a coastal model would have. But these models are great to show you special areas that are at risk of flooding and conceptual impacts from proposed interventions that we are soon to add to the models. So the next steps really are further model calibration, which I'm kind of calling out to all of y'all. If you have any pictures of flooding in your neighborhood, please send them our way. It would be really helpful to know what date the flooding occurred on, at what time if you have it, and where in the community it occurred. That way we can compare to our model and our model results in the existing conditions to see if our model is in fact portraying actual flooding and flooding depths. And that's a great way to calibrate models when you don't have data. There's not really any gauge data in the community, so no way to tell directly the exact flooding, but this is photos and evidence from residents is a really great tool for calibrating models like this. So, and then the next steps, once we have it fully calibrated, are to model the designed interventions that GCCDS is working on, and then analyze the hydraulic benefits of those proposed interventions. So, seeing if buffer zones and stormwater storage are actually helping to alleviate flooding in the neighborhood and improve conveyance. Yeah, that's it. Do you guys have anything else to add?
No, I think the important thing is to realize that now we have this really useful model, right? You know, and I think Moffett Nichols has done a great job to take what we have to work with, and so as you were saying, as we begin to look at different kind of proposed projects, we can now plug those into the model and see how it might change things. So this will become a very useful tool as we go forward on this. I don't know if you want to take any, if you get questions while this is fresh, or?
I do, but we're running close on time.
Okay.
So I wanna get through the presentations, just in case folks have to leave right at 1:30. For those of you who don't have to leave at 1:30, we have this room all day. So you can hang out, ask questions, but I just wanna make sure that we get through the next presentation. So, thank you so much.
One way to we printed out up there on the back. I'm sorry, we printed out that sort of map that kind of shows some of these, so you can look at those as well afterwards.
All right, so next, Moffett Nickel is also going to be presenting a preliminary housing assessment. So we're talking about a lot of different things here. We've got restoration, we've got stormwater management, we've got flooding. I know there's a lot of different pieces of this project. But at its core, buy-in was asked by Cherokee Concerned Citizens to come and support the desires of residents who want to move. Housing is a major issue everywhere in the country, and so we really want to make sure that when we're talking about any type of relocation program for folks who want to move and whose properties can be used for this restoration work, that hopefully by the end of today you see as providing value to this neighborhood and community, that rehousing is going to be a big part of this. So we're really excited to start this chapter of the project and have support from the folks at Moffett Nickel again to help us start thinking about how to think through that, what are the challenges and issues and opportunities, and I'm really happy to turn it over to Haley. So thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Good afternoon, I'm Haley. I work at Moffett Nickel. I'm a landscape architect and planner. And I've been studying and working with communities on where they might resettle for about a decade. So I'm going to talk about, let's see. And I'm from Mississippi, so I'm happy to be back on the coast. So here we go. Buy-in did, as they've talked about a little bit already, they did a survey with the residents in Cherokee Forest, just to see, are people interested in moving, are they interested in staying, how many people are in their household, things like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the findings from that survey, and then I'll talk a little bit about what's available right now in Pascagoula, in the area, Jackson County, and the idea is to think about, are there things that match what people want, if they are interested in moving. So the survey that Buy-in did, there's 132 respondents. So not everybody in the community responded. 115 of those people live there currently. 10 have tenants in rental houses. One of them had a vacant house, and there were 6 vacant lots. So, out of 132, 80 people said yes, they're interested in moving as soon as possible. 29 more said they're interested but would like more info. So, what's out there, what are the possibilities? 6 people said they're not interested in moving at all. Some of the concerns that people talked about, amount of money offered. Would they be able to get enough money to be able to move? Health and safety came up, not only in this question, but in many other questions throughout the survey. Good health and safety of their family was their most important concern. Finding an affordable place to live. If they do get enough money to be able to move, can they find something nearby where they would like to live? Affordable quality housing, it's hard to find in the area was a concern. There might be affordable housing that they can afford, but will it be something that's risky? Or if it's not, if it's available, is it of high quality? And then 107 people brought up it may be hard to sell their home if they told buyers about the flood and toxic exposure risk. So they also asked people what the fair market value of their home might be. And I highlighted a few in pink because those are kind of the biggest bucket of people. You'll see the 15,000 to 35,000, that's more of the vacant lots. But 100,000 to 250,000, that's the biggest chunk of the residents. They thought the fair market value. But some of them went all the way up to 500,000. So my job was to think about that and the amount of people that lived in the homes. Are there available homes in the area that match that? Another kind of interesting takeaway, I know a lot of people have lived, I talked to some of you have lived in this community for a long time. They may have had larger families at one time. But there's a lot of people that are just 1 to 2 person households in the neighborhood. And I'll talk about what that means and the takeaways from that a little bit later. So 57 of the people had 1 to 2 people in the household, 46 were 3 to 4 people, and then 16 households had 5 plus. So they may have kids, maybe a multi-generational home where their parents are there. Some of the special considerations, 24 households have kids that are 5 years or younger. 37 households had people who are over 65. And then 43 have households with residents that have disabilities. So those are just things to keep in mind as we're looking for other options. Most people own the homes, but there are some renters in the neighborhood. Most people wanted a home that was between 1,500 and 2,000 square feet. And safety and proximity to families, schools, and work came up in a lot of different ways as well. So I'm gonna talk about this is just a snapshot of what's available like this week in the Pascagoula area. And I'm also gonna talk about the Jackson County area. So you see the ones highlighted in pink. That's our bucket of the most people that were surveyed. Most people fell into that category. 100,000 to 250,000. The bold number, the 21, 15, and 7, that's what's available right now. Next to it, 23, 37, and 15, that's what people said that they wanted in the survey. So you can see in those 3 categories, there's not enough in Pascagoula that satisfy that. It's close, except for that 151,000 to 200,000. That's definitely a gap. But I also want to point out, I said that there were quite a few 1 to 2 person households. If I was a developer, I would be developing 1 and 2 bedroom homes here right now. So, some of those needs might have changed in those households. I know as my parents get older, they downsize, right? A lot of people do that. So there is a gap in 1 to 2 bedroom households, and townhomes and condos. We have one of each of those that are available in the market right now. Lots of 3 bedrooms. So this is what that looks looks like. We took each one of those homes that are available and actually put them on the map where they are. There are some down there in Reuben focus, right, near the neighborhood. You can see, we've talked a little bit about the flood zones today. We know that much of Pascagoula is within a flood zone. The new rail station, Amtrak station, has anybody ridden the train? I have, it's great. But you know, those things can help bring other people to the communities. It's definitely a positive. Lots of people were on the train when we rode over to the Mule. Lots of people were on the train. I think it was a whole senior center that went. I think it was about 40 or 45 seniors that were on the train. So that can be a great thing for people who are older and looking for something that they can get around easily to other towns. Also in the survey, we asked people where they wanted to move. A lot of people said in the area. There were very few people that said they wanted to move somewhere else, and a lot of the reasons were because I have family, my kids are in Kentucky, my kids are in Virginia. Lots of people said in the area, had quite a few in Pascagoula, Moss Point. Several said away from the coast, just 9 of them. Out of Mississippi, only 4. Again, that was, most of those are related to family. But a lot of people said anywhere safe. They were open to wherever, they just want to go somewhere that's safe. I'll talk about Jackson County. You see there's very little pink on this one. If you're looking at Jackson County as a whole, there's a lot more housing that's available for these households. Again, the ones in bold are the ones that are available, the ones that are not in bold are the ones from the survey. So there's plenty of housing in Jackson County for people who are interested. You have a lot more townhomes and condos. I will point out that a lot of the condos do have an HOA fee, so that does add to that price, to that monthly price, that yearly price. There's still not a ton of 1 bedrooms, so tell your developer friends. And here's what that looks like. So you can see most of those homes are below I-10. Potential locations from the survey outside of like the immediate Pascagoula area, Big Point, Gaucher, Sauget, Bluesdale, Ocean Springs all came up, Hurley and Van Cleve. I know there's a lot of development in those areas, and Gulfport. So again, people don't want to go very far, they like to stay in their communities. We also looked at the future land use. There's been a lot of recent planning efforts in Jackson County, but also in the area. Where do we want to, where does the community want to develop and bring resources to? Single-family residential is in yellow, so you can see that going up to the north in the county. The commercial areas are in the pink. And also around the Pascagoula area, and there's been talk about annexation. I know it's a touchy subject, I don't have an opinion, but that's where that would expand to if the annexation went through. So a lot of that is in that floodplain area, the flood zone, but it is also tied to the base flood elevation. So there is requirements for the building heights in these areas. We also looked at the Jackson County Resilience Plan, which is not quite out yet. It is in the final stages of that. Just to look where future development is intended to go or thinking of going, and what that might look like. Coastal cities, these are the most dense and mostly built out areas, so those opportunities would be more infill areas. Rural and suburban coastal areas, opportunity for new housing there. But, really think the policies in that plan is thinking about how you minimize the impact on those existing residents. And really being strategic about green space to make sure that you conserve the green space and improve resilience for future development. Rural inland, this is typically lower population density, so large lots. There's a lot of undeveloped land, but development is moving in that direction pretty rapidly. And really there, it's, again, keeping that green space for conservation, for making sure that you don't increase flood risk in those areas as they develop. And really thinking about how do we develop a little bit differently, and I'll talk about that in just a second. We already know there's a large portion of floodplain and conservation land in the area, in the county. And Kelly talked about the heavy industrial area is concentrated near Pascagoula and Moss Point, just because of how we developed over time. I talked about the annexation and potential for development there that's at a certain height. Multifamily townhomes are increasing in the area, but they're also in demand. Jackson County is working on or has done a compound flood model, so you can look at how how storm surge and rain work together and look at how development raises flood or not. And then the Jackson County Resilience Plan that I talked about. One of the great things that is in there, they're really looking at policies. And as a landscape architect and designer, I always think about policy allows you to do or not do certain things. It tells you how you can or can't develop. So it's really important to have those policies in place for future development. It's really looking at guiding growth to areas with lower risk, how to reduce flood in different areas that I talked about on the side, updating those building standards so it's the risk is lower as well, and risk and resilient education for all the way from elected officials to residents. So I talked about some of the policies that they're looking at, and that one thing is cluster development. Y'all ever heard of this? It's been around for a long time, but it's I talked about the rural areas have very large lots. So if I own a lot in a rural area, I can take down all the trees if I want. I can do whatever I want on my entire piece of property, right? And a cluster development, it really looks at how do we take those sensitive habitats and preserve the trees, preserve the drainage on those areas, and reduce the amount of lot size per person. So same amount of lots, but just you're putting the lots in the areas that are less can't think of the word, sorry. Where it's not as steep, there's not flooding, trees, those types of things. So again, same amount of lots, but you put them in a smaller area and conserve the other areas, the sensitive habitat. So that's something that's happening in the county now. So some takeaways. 83% of the people surveyed in the community are interested in moving. For the most part, people want to stay in the Pascagoula area. Most want 1,500 to 2,000 square foot home. 43% of those are a 1 to 2 person household. So other options may be something they would like to consider. 79% have kids, seniors, or disabled residents. Those typically are people who are more vulnerable in storms and lack resilience even more. Most believe 100,000 to 250,000 is a fair market value for their home. They're concerned about ability to sell for enough money to buy safe, affordable, quality homes. And finally, new development is moving toward the rural areas, and it's really important to adjust those development practices so we can reduce risk overall. forward with the next few phases, it really gets a lot more individual, with what individual people would like to do. So thank you, it's been really interesting and exciting to continue working with all of you.
Jen's gonna close us out. I just wanted to say, I know it's 1:30. If you have to leave, but you want any comments or questions, I'm gonna go park by the front door. You can either write them down and hand them to me, or just have a quick chat with me on your way out so I can follow up. Okay, thank you. Wow, I learned a lot in those last two presentations. That was really cool. Okay, I hope you guys learned something as well today. As you can tell, there's a lot to learn about, a lot to figure out. Okay, yeah, it's just broken. It's not the batteries. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so there's a lot to consider. There's a lot to work through. There's a lot involved in this relocation to restoration project, right? It involves infrastructure and housing, environmental conditions, economics, human well-being, all at once. And so in order to take this holistic approach, it's going to require a lot of collaboration. It's going to require a lot of you that are already here in the room. And that's really honestly what excites me, right? It's like, it is going to take a lot of work from a lot of different people, a lot of different groups. But we have a solid foundation. We have a lot of great people that we've been working with already in phase 1, and we have what we need to move forward into phase 2 and beyond. So I'm optimistic and I'm excited to continue to work with it feels weird to talk, to have your voice go in and out. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm excited about moving forward, to continue to partner, to have honest conversations, and to coordinate across different sectors. We invite you all to continue to work with us, to continue to show up, to participate. I will be following up with folks after this. You'll receive an email from me to give you more details about what that type of participation looks like, right? What more workshops to come, more meetings and things like that, more studies and investigations and things, okay? I guess I'm gonna go ahead and release you, but like as Kelly was saying, if you have any questions, feel free to stick around. We're here to chat, or you can follow up with me, at another time. So thank you all so much.